But we need some revenge because Louisville came up in 2016, I believe it was, Matt, and we had control of that game all the way, and there's a late fumble by us at the end just trying to kill the clock. Louisville recovers it, scores points off of it. They get the win up in South Bend. So we're looking to get a little revenge out of this.
Okay, let's move on, guys. Let's play. Go ahead, Matthew.
Like I said, Rick, I mean, this is not the Louisville team that got hammered by Kentucky last year. This is a much better team. So, like I said, it will be a closer game than many think it's going to be, but I still think Notre Dame's going to find a way to win it.
All right, let's move on down the road. Today, we're talking about our Hoosiers, Rick. You and I, IU guy. I am an IU guy for sure. I know you like IU as well. Ball State at Lucas Oil Stadium. It's a Ball State home game, if you will, and they chose to play it there at Lucas in a great venue to go to if you've never been there. But Ball State, IU kicking off just right after this game, after this show, actually. And I tell you what, both teams have a lot to show, but I really am. I say this every year at about this time, so nothing new, just going to repeat the sermon. But I think IU's got it in the tank this year, Rick.
I agree. These past couple of years, I mean, they play all these top opponents, these elite programs like Ohio State. They play them tough, and things fall apart in the second half. If they could just get over that hump, maybe they could be I don't know, maybe I wouldn't say a top 5 team, but they could just be on the cusp of it. If they could just get over this hump against the elite programs, I know a lot of that is athletes and recruiting, and it's IU's known for basketball instead of football. But I like their head coach. He just needs to get them over this hump and watch out for the sneaky Cardinals of Ball State because we know how they played against Notre Dame last year. So maybe we might run into a scenario like that today.
Well, absolutely, Matthew. And let's talk about IU. I mean, I don't think that they're a playoff contender, but I think they're certainly a bowl contender this year.
I think they're going to need to find a way to win a few games in the Big Ten, and that's going to still be a tough ask. But I think most of their tougher games are away from home. But I'd say based on this and based on their performance here, I think we could be adding another eye to the old Oaken bucket chain based on Purdue's performance against Nevada. If Indiana has a decent performance in Indianapolis, almost said Muncie there, my bad, against Ball State, I think that's going to be a good performance. But I think if you're looking for the biggest game in the Big Ten among Big Ten opponents today, it's got to be that game at Palo Alto, Northwestern, with a good chance possibly to upset a top 25 team in Stanford.
Well, I'm not basing the entire Purdue outlook on the game last night with Nevada. We got a lot of time to go, but we'll see what happens. Rick, we're going to get into this more in the second hour of the college football, but breakdown. College football Saturday is back, if you will, baby. Break down the top 25 as you see it. Give us a preview of what we'll be talking about in an hour or two.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of question marks in the top 25. Unless you're one of the top 2 teams, there's a lot of question marks in the second half of the show today. We'll start talking about who's your favorite team. Call in 917-889-8516. Give us your thoughts on the top 25 as well. Who's your favorite team? Who do you think outside of Clemson, Alabama, actually has a shot to win the national title this year?
Matthew, action up in your neck of the woods yesterday. Michigan State easily handles Tulsa. Again, these are games that you expect them to win, and when they don't win, like Purdue does not win over Nevada, it causes a ruckus. It causes a lot of people jibber-jabbering. But Michigan State easily handles Tulsa. They're 28-7 there. But what are your thoughts about the Spartans this year?
I think the Spartans look solid. You look at solid performance for Michigan State, solid performance against Wisconsin. Minnesota, though, nearly lost to South Dakota State, an FCS team, on Thursday. So I wouldn't be feeling confident if I was in the land of 10,000 lakes right now. But Michigan State, I think, has got a chance. I think they and Wisconsin have the best chance of keeping Ohio State or Michigan out of the Big Ten championship game.
Rick, Matt just mentioned Wisconsin. They go down to South Florida, and I know college doesn't have the mercy rule like high school does, but 49-0, no problems for the Badgers in South Florida.
Yeah, Wisconsin's going to be right there at the top of the Big Ten this year. Man, they look great, right? I mean, it's going to be exciting to see them later in the season, who they're going to get to play against for the Big Ten title, because that's where they're going to be in it. Guys, it's the Big Ten championship. Is that still in Indianapolis? It has been the last few years. I don't know
yes.
if that's one of the games they're talking about
year.
moving. Yeah, okay. They're going to be there again this year. I think they've been the last 2 years. I know they were there last year. They're going to be back again this year. So it's going to be Michigan, Ohio State, one of those two versus Wisconsin.
You know, I gotta always talk about my Black Knights, just like you got to talk about the Falcons with Air Force, and obviously one of the biggest games coming up later on in the year is Army Navy. But Army Knights and Rice, the Army Black Knights handle Rice University. But in all seriousness, guys, Army's got what it takes to be a really serious bowl contender this year. They're never going to be in the playoffs just because of the type of a school and college that they are. But, Matthew, what are your thoughts about Army West Point?
Let me bring them up. Obviously, they had an outstanding season. The last 2 years, they won the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy, convincing wins over both Navy and Air Force. And let me see here. They're an independent, correct?
Yes.
Army is, yes.
All right, let me bring them up 1 second. Of course, they almost came super close to eliminating Oklahoma and Kyler Murray and company and Norman last year. I tell you what, the next matchup against Michigan, that could be an interesting one. Coming up on Saturday, September 7th. My 37th birthday, by the way.
Well, happy birthday to you, sir. Rick will sing happy birthday to you.
That's right.
That game could be very, very close. I'm not going to say it's going to be Appalachian State all over again for Michigan, but that's a game I think they could certainly not overlook, having to take on the Black Knights. And then, obviously, the two Commander-in-Chief games on November 2nd against Air Force, and then, obviously, the December 14th matchup against Navy. I think those are capable matchups. One possible test later in the schedule, though, the thing that could make it interesting is they have a 2-week break between their trip to Hawaii to take on an improving Rainbow Warriors club and then the matchup against Navy. So it'll be very curious to see if that takes something out of them and possibly hurts their performance in that big game against Navy on December 14th.
Rick, go ahead. Did you have something else to comment on the service academies?
Yeah, I'm glad he brought up the Michigan game for Army. That game is next week, guys. And if you're Michigan, you need to have that game circled because that one's going to be close. I think that's going to be closer than what the experts think. I don't even know what they think. I'm not saying it's an Appalachian State situation
why don't you ask
either.
Me, Rick?
You know, like
you don't know what the experts
what do you think? They need to have that game circled because Army could sneak out a win. It's crazy to think about. Army, I think, is very good. They're very tough. That triple option offense is just something teams don't get to experience. You know, Michigan doesn't see something like that every year. It's what happened to Oklahoma last year. They don't know how to defend against it. Notre Dame plays Navy every year. They kind of know, you know, what to do against a triple option. But teams like Michigan don't see that. Have that game circled, Michigan fans, next week. It's going to be close.
Well, there's a lot of reasons to watch that game, not only because Army's going to win, go Army, but, I mean, honestly, you talk about making a statement off the board, guys, and this is in all seriousness. Harbaugh's job hot seat might be heating up if they lose to Army because people are just going to start the chatter. They're just going to start the winding up with the chatter because – you know, if Harbaugh can't get it done this year, there's probably going to be a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of
people. Army.
In my opinion, whose seat is hotter right now? Is it Jim Harbaugh's or Shea Patterson's? Honestly, I think it's Shea Patterson's job at quarterback that's in more jeopardy than Jim Harbaugh's job as head coach.
Rick? Yeah, you're right with Dylan McCaffrey right behind him. I know the fans are wanting the McCaffrey brother to come in. If Shea Patterson's not trying to start off hot this year, you're going to start hearing all the chatter about a quarterback change.
Guys, let's move on to more talk from the Big Ten as we try to get through these games that happened over the weekend because in the next half hour we're going to dive into some conversation about Andrew Luck. UMass comes into Rutgers. Rutgers wins relatively easily. but a Big Ten team school, so we'll talk about them. Matthew, what are your thoughts about Rutgers this year?
They're still in over their head. I mean, it's like just when they joined the Big East Conference, it took them forever to get going in the Big East, and unfortunately, I think it's going to be a trend that they're going to have a never-ending story in the Big Ten. I just don't think they have the resources to challenge, the big teams. Now, some of them they can beat, like, the Marylands maybe down Indiana or Purdue. Illinois maybe, but beyond that, they don't have the resources to beat teams like Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Ohio State. They simply don't have it. I don't think they have enough to beat Penn State either.
Rick, let's go over to the other Utah game, Utah State, Wake Forest. That was a pretty close game for Wake Forest at home, 35-38. And in the second hour, we'll get into the BYU and the Utah Ute game, a completely different Utah school. But Utah State in Wake Forest in a close battle there with Wake Forest. What's that tell us about the Demons this year?
Well, it's just what Matt said about Rutgers. No, they don't have the resources to field really a great team. I think they're under. I don't know if they're under a new head coach this year or not. I just kind of got them confused with Maryland because I know Maryland is. They don't have the resources. They don't have the recruiting. Nobody's going to looking at the ACC and looking at Wake Forest, to go play football if you're a 4 or 5-star athlete. So it comes down to recruiting and resources.
Let's get two more games that I want to talk about in in-state rivalry, Colorado State versus the Buffaloes of Colorado. Colorado always kind of gets overlooked, but I think this is one team you got to keep your eye on as a dark horse to sneak into the high bowl levels this year. Matthew, what are your thoughts?
I just think the Pac-12 is going to be too tough for Colorado. Colorado State with a crapshoot in the Mountain West. I think this is a winnable game for the Rams, even though Colorado on paper looks solid. I just don't think they're going to be able to keep up the pace going in the Pac-12 with, again, a loaded schedule for them in 2019. So if Colorado State ever had a chance to wipe out Colorado, today would be the time to do it.
Rick, one final game from yesterday, the Cowboys and Oregon State. We're going to be watching Oklahoma State all year long. This is one of those games that you figure they're going to win, and they do win. This is one of those games that's just kind of a practice preseason game, if you will, for college football. But Oklahoma State over Oregon State, 52-36.
Well, Mike Gundy with the fabulous mullet, and he's a man. I think he's over 50 years old now. So, Oklahoma State, one of those Big 12 teams. I don't know if they're going to be right in the mix of it this year with Texas on the rise, and Oklahoma's still going to be really good. But they're a top 5 team in the Big 12, so it's really no surprise. Oregon State football, I don't know, after Chad Johnson and T.J. Houshmandzadeh and those guys went on the NFL, that program really took a nosedive. So, no surprise there. Mike Gundy's a man.
Matthew Embury, WSBT up in South Bend, our official IndyCar contributor. We'll give you the final word. Anything you want to talk about IndyCar and any final word about college football before we move on into our next segment?
Well, apologize on that one. I didn't realize that Colorado State game, they lost that on Friday, so my bad on that one. Colorado did win. But you look at Purdue. You look at the non-conference schedule they have this year. Nevada was the easiest of those 3 games. I mean, look who they've got next. Even though they're both at home, Vanderbilt, TCU. I hate to say it, Rick, but this is a 0-3 Purdue team staring me in the face right now, and I think this is going to really, if you were talking about Jeff Brom looking for an out, possibly to go elsewhere after this season, he certainly may be thinking about trying to get out of this situation before the stuff hits the fan, because this does not look pretty right now if you're a fan of Purdue.
Yeah, you're right. And, last year, I think they started with 0-5, 0-6. And then we got to meet Tyler Trent and followed through his journey with him and walk, his journey with him. And then they got the big win against Ohio State, kind of turned the season around. Well, there was some excitement for that program this year, but it could be another 0-5, 0-6 start. And then one more question about Colorado State. I know there's a lot of excitement about that game right now on this show, but